My name is Naomi Bennett, and I am 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, my father came to my house after 8 years of silence.
He didn't call first.
He didn't send a message. He simply appeared at my front gate on a Tuesday morning, wearing a dark gray coat and carrying a leather briefcase. My husband, Daniel, was upstairs with our 2 children. I was in the kitchen making coffee when the security guard called. "Mrs. Bennett, there's someone here asking for you." "Who?" There was a pause. "Your father." The coffee mug nearly slipped from my hand. My father, Richard Bennett. The man who hadn't spoken to me since my wedding day. The man who had once looked me straight in the eyes and said, "If you marry that man, don't expect this family to be waiting for you when you come back." 8 years. 8 birthdays. 8 Christmases. 8 years of unanswered messages and letters returned unopened. And now he was standing outside my house. I walked to the gate myself. When I saw him, I almost didn't recognize the expression on his face. He looked nervous. My father had never looked nervous around me before. He had always been the strongest person in the room. At least, that's what I remembered.
He stepped toward me.
"Naomi." Hearing my name from his mouth felt strange. I folded my arms. "What are you doing here?" He looked past me toward the house. "I think we need to talk." "About what?" He took a breath. "Family." I almost smiled. "After 8 years?" He ignored the question and opened his briefcase. Then he pulled out a cream-colored folder.
He handed it to me.
I opened it. The first page contained several handwritten figures: medical expenses, business debts, property repairs, legal fees. Then at the bottom there was a total: $735,000. I stared at the number. Then I looked at him. "You came here for money." His face tightened. "That's not how I would describe it." "How would you describe it?" "We're family." I laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. "Family?" My father looked offended. "You have more than enough." That sentence told me everything. He had not come because he missed his daughter. He had come because someone had told him exactly how much money his daughter had. I closed the folder. "You haven't seen me in 8 years." "I know." "You've never met my children." "I know." "You didn't attend my wedding." He looked down. "I know. But you know how much money I have?" He didn't answer. I handed the folder back. "I'm sorry." His eyes widened. "What?" "I can't give you the money." His voice became hard. "Naomi, you don't understand what we're dealing with." "No." I looked at him. "You don't understand what I'm dealing with." I turned toward the house. Then I stopped. Because there was something else I wanted him to see. Something I had kept hidden for 8 years. I walked into my study and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a red leather ledger. The cover was scratched. The corners were worn, but the pages were carefully preserved. I carried it back to the doorway.
My father stared at it.
"What is that?" I looked at him. "My list." "Your list of what?" "Everything." I opened the first page. There were dates,
Names. Times.
details. 41 entries. Every birthday card that came back unopened. Every message my mother ignored. Every Christmas photograph I mailed that was returned. Every cruel thing my brother said after I married Daniel. Every reminder that my family had chosen to erase me. My father stared at the pages. Then I said the words I had waited 8 years to say. "You brought me a list of what you need." I held up the red ledger. "I brought a list of what you did." And that was the moment my father realized something. He had spent 8 years believing I would eventually forget. I hadn't. But before you can understand why my father came back asking for $735,000, you need to know why he stopped speaking to me in the first place. Because 8 years earlier, I wasn't a millionaire. I wasn't a successful businesswoman. I wasn't living in a beautiful house. I was just a 26-year-old woman who had fallen in love with the one man my family believed I should never marry. And that man was Daniel Brooks. 8 years earlier, my life looked completely different. I lived in a small apartment above a bakery in Fairmont, Pennsylvania. Every morning at 6, the smell of fresh bread came through the floorboards. I didn't have much money. My car was 11 years old. My furniture came from discount stores. And my laptop had a cracked corner that I covered with a sticker. But I was happy. I had graduated with a degree in software engineering, and I had just started working for a small technology company. My parents wanted something different for me. They wanted stability. They wanted respectability. And most importantly, they wanted control. My father, Richard Bennett, owned a construction company. He had built it from one pickup truck and a toolbox into a successful regional business. People respected him. In our town, his name opened doors. My mother, Evelyn, was a perfectionist. She organized everything. Family dinners,
Church events.
birthdays, even my future. My younger brother, Caleb, was 4 years younger than me. He was the favorite. Everyone knew it. If Caleb made a mistake, my father called it a learning experience. If I made one, it became a character flaw. Still, I loved my family. I believed they loved me. Then I met Daniel. We met at a technology conference. I had been standing near a presentation table when a man accidentally knocked a cup of coffee against my notebook. "Oh no," he said. He immediately grabbed some napkins. "I'm so sorry," I laughed. "It's just coffee. I ruined your notes. I can rewrite them." He looked at the notebook. "Let me buy you another one." "You really don't have to." "I know." He smiled. "I want to." His name was Daniel Brooks. He was 29. He worked as a software developer for a growing technology company. He was intelligent, calm, funny, and incredibly observant. But the thing I noticed first was how he listened. When I talked, he didn't look at his phone. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to prove he was smarter. He simply listened. We exchanged numbers. A few weeks later, we started dating. 6 months after that, I knew I wanted to marry him. Daniel was black. I knew my parents had old-fashioned ideas about race. But I had convinced myself that their love for me would be stronger than their prejudice. I was wrong. The first time Daniel came to my parents' house for dinner, my mother barely spoke to him. My father asked him questions about his job. Daniel answered politely. He asked about the construction company. My father answered with one-word responses. Dinner ended after 40 minutes. Daniel thanked my parents and left. The moment his car disappeared down the road, my mother turned to me. "You need to end this." I stared at her. "End what?" "Your relationship with him."
Why?
She looked toward my father.
He didn't speak.
Then she said quietly, "Because this isn't the life we raised you for." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, Daniel is a good man." "That isn't the point." "Then what is the point?"
She looked at me.
"The point is that people will talk." My father finally spoke. "You know what our family name means." I shook my head. "So this is about what people think." "It's about the consequences." "What consequences?" Neither answered. I already knew. I just didn't want to say it. My father finally did. "You cannot marry him." I felt something inside me break.
Why? He looked directly at me.
"Because he's not what this family expected." I swallowed. "Would you say the same thing if he were white?" Silence. That silence was louder than any answer. I left their house that night crying. Daniel was waiting outside my apartment. He knew something was wrong. "What happened?" I couldn't speak. He pulled me into his arms. And for the first time, I told him everything. He didn't insult my parents. He didn't tell me to choose him. He simply said, "Naomi, I don't want you to lose your family because of me." I looked at him. "You didn't make me lose them." He stayed quiet.
They made a choice, I said.
3 months later, Daniel proposed. There was no expensive restaurant, no crowd, no photographer. He took me to the park where we had our first date. Then he got down on one knee. I said yes. When I told my parents, my mother cried. But they weren't happy tears. My father stood up from the dining table. If you marry him, don't come back expecting this family to accept what you've done. I stared at him. You mean accept who I love? He shook his head. You've made your decision. I looked at my mother. She wouldn't even look at me. Then my father said something I would remember for the rest of my life. From this day forward, you're on your own. I walked out. Daniel and I married 6 weeks later. There were only 34 people at the wedding. His mother, Kendra, held my hands afterward and cried. You are my daughter now, she whispered. I smiled through my tears. But later that night, when Daniel was asleep, I sat alone on the edge of the bed. I opened my phone. I had one message from my mother. For a second, my heart raced. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she wanted to congratulate me. I opened it. It said, "Do not contact us again." I stared at those 5 words for a long time. Then I opened a drawer. Inside was a small red leather notebook I had bought months earlier. I wrote the date. Then I wrote, Entry 1. My mother told me not to contact her again. I didn't know then that I would continue writing in that book for 8 years. I didn't know there would eventually be 41 entries. I didn't know I would build a company with Daniel from a tiny rented office. I didn't know we would someday become worth millions. And I certainly didn't know that one day my father would stand outside my front door holding a $735,000 request. But 8 years later, that day finally came. And when it did, I was ready because my family had forgotten something. They had taught me how to live without them. And once you learn how to live without someone, they can't simply return and demand a place in your life. Not even when they bring a $735,000 price tag with them. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories about family, betrayal, forgiveness, and people who rise after being rejected, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And if you were Naomi, would you give your family the $735,000 after 8 years of silence? Tell me in the comments. Now, let's continue. My father remained standing in the doorway. His eyes were fixed on the red ledger in my hand. For the first time since I had known him, he looked uncertain. Naomi, he said quietly, you don't have to do this. I almost smiled. Do what? Bring up the past. The past is the reason you're standing here.
He looked away.
My younger brother Caleb shifted uncomfortably beside him. I placed the ledger on the table. Sit down. They both sat. I took the chair opposite them. The $735,000 request was still lying between us. I picked it up. Let's go through this. My father frowned. There's nothing to go through. Oh, there is. I pointed at the first item. Medical expenses for Mom. I understand that. He nodded. She needs treatment. I believe you. I moved to the next. Caleb's business debt. Caleb looked down. Things got difficult. How much? About $210,000. I nodded. And the house repairs? My father answered. $85,000. I turned another page. Legal expenses? He hesitated. $40,000. Then I reached the bottom. What's this? He didn't answer. I read it aloud. Family Restoration Fund, $75,000. Caleb looked at my father. My father cleared his throat. We thought it would be good to have everyone together again. Everyone. Your mother.
Caleb. You.
The children. I stared at him. You want me to pay $75,000 for a family reunion? That's not what it is. Then what is it? He couldn't answer. I closed the folder. You didn't come here to rebuild a family. My father looked hurt. You don't know that. Then explain why your first conversation with me in 8 years is about money. Silence. Caleb finally spoke. We didn't know how else to approach you. I looked at him. You could have called. He lowered his head. You could have sent a letter. Nothing. You could have apologized. Still nothing. You could have asked about your niece and nephew. My father's eyes dropped. And you could have simply said, Naomi, we miss you. My voice cracked. But you didn't. I opened the red ledger. Instead, you came with a bill. I turned to the first page. Entry 1. My father watched me. 8 years ago, Mom told me never to contact her again. I turned the page. Entry 2. My wedding invitation returned unopened. Another page. Entry 3. My birthday card returned. Another. Entry 7. Christmas photograph returned. Another. Entry 12. Caleb told Aunt Susan that I had chosen a stranger over my family. Caleb's face became pale. I was angry. You were repeating what Dad taught you. My father looked at him.
Caleb said nothing.
I continued. Entry 18. I sent Mom a photograph of my pregnancy. My father's eyes lifted. She never saw it? She returned it. He looked stunned. I didn't know that. She did. I turned another page. Entry 23. My daughter was born. My father swallowed. You have a daughter?
I stared at him.
You didn't know? He shook his head slowly. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. That's what 8 years looks like. I closed the ledger. My daughter is 7 now. My father looked devastated. And my son is 5. He covered his mouth. For the first time, I saw something that looked like genuine regret. But regret didn't erase time. I want to meet them, he whispered. I looked at him. Why? Because they're my grandchildren. You never asked about them. I didn't know. You never tried to know. He lowered his head. I was wrong. The room became completely silent. Those 3 words were the apology I had waited years to hear. But they weren't enough. Not yet. My father looked at the folder. Will you help us with Mom's treatment? I thought carefully. Then I said, I will pay the hospital directly. His eyes widened. What? I won't give you $735,000. He nodded slowly. But if Mom genuinely needs medical treatment, I'll make sure she gets it. He looked at me. And Caleb? I shook my head. His business debt is not my responsibility. Caleb looked disappointed. But I continued. If he wants help rebuilding his company, I'll pay for 1 business consultation with an independent advisor. After that, he's responsible for his own choices. Caleb nodded. And the house?
No.
My father didn't argue. And the $75,000 family reunion? I almost smiled. Absolutely not. For the first time, Caleb laughed quietly. My father looked at him. What? Caleb shook his head. Nothing. Then something unexpected happened. My father pushed the folder away. I don't want the money anymore. I stared at him. What? I came here thinking your money could fix everything. He looked at the red ledger. But I understand now. His voice became shaky. Money isn't what we're missing. I said nothing. We're missing 8 years.
He stood.
I can't buy them back. No, I said. You can't give them back either. I know. He looked toward the front door. Then he turned around. Can I call you tomorrow? I hesitated. Call me. He nodded. Can I speak to the children? Not yet. His face fell. Give me time. He nodded. I will. He walked toward the door. Then stopped. Naomi? Yes. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. There it was. Not a speech. Not an excuse. Just 2 words.
I'm sorry.
My father left. Caleb followed him. And for several minutes, I stood alone in the hallway. Daniel came downstairs. He had heard everything. He wrapped his arms around me. Are you okay? I nodded. I'm getting there. What happens now? I looked at the red ledger. I don't know. And that was the truth. I had spent 8 years imagining what I would say if my family ever came back. I thought I would scream. I thought I would shut the door. I thought I would tell them they were too late. But when the moment finally arrived, I realized something. I didn't want revenge. I wanted control over my own life. I wanted the right to decide whether they stayed in it. 3 weeks later, my father called again. No mention of money. No request. No pressure. He simply asked, "How are you?" I said, "I'm fine." Then he asked about the children. For the first time, I answered. We talked for 20 minutes. The next week, he called again. Then again. Slowly, cautiously, something began to change. My mother eventually sent a letter. It was 4 pages long. She apologized for rejecting Daniel. She apologized for missing my wedding. She apologized for never meeting my children. She admitted that she had been more concerned about what people thought than about what her daughter felt. I read the letter twice. Then I put it away. I wasn't ready to call her. But I wasn't angry anymore. Months passed. Eventually, I allowed my father to meet my children. We met at a quiet restaurant. My daughter looked at him carefully. "Are you Grandpa?" My father smiled, through tears. "Yes."
She thought about it.
Then she asked, "Where have you been?"
My father looked at me.
I didn't answer for him. He knelt beside her. "Far away." She nodded. Then she reached for his hand. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Not because 8 years disappeared. They didn't. Not because everything was suddenly perfect. It wasn't. But because my children were being given the opportunity to decide for themselves what kind of relationship they wanted with their grandfather. And I was finally making my own choice too. I never gave my family the $735,000. I didn't pay Caleb's debts. I didn't rebuild my parents' house. And I didn't fund their family reunion. But I did something much more valuable. I gave them a chance to earn back my trust.
Slowly.
One conversation at a time. One apology at a time. One action at a time. The red ledger still sits in my study, but I no longer add to it. The last entry was written the day my father met my children. I wrote, "Entry 42, Dad came without asking for anything." Then underneath it I wrote, "Maybe this is where the story changes." 8 years ago, my family told me that choosing Daniel meant I was no longer one of them. They thought they were taking my family away. What they didn't understand was that Daniel became my family. Together, we built a life. Together, we built a company. Together, we raised our children. And together, we learned something I will never forget. Being rejected does not mean you are unworthy of love. Sometimes people walk away because they cannot accept the person you are becoming. And sometimes, years later, they come back when they realize what they lost. But when they return, you don't have to reopen the door completely. You get to decide how far it opens. You get to decide what forgiveness looks like. And most importantly, you get to decide your worth without letting anyone put a price on it. If you enjoyed Naomi's story, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me in the comments. Would you forgive your family after 8 years of rejection? Or would you leave the past where it belongs?